Birth was nearly midnight when Andrew, the medical bachelor, was returning after a disappointing evening with Christine, the girl he loves. When he reached Bingover, he found Joe Morgan walking up and down the short steps between the closed surgery and the entrance to the house. At the sight of him, the burly driller's face expressed relief. Ah, doctor, I'm glad to see you. I've been back and forward here this last hour. The missus won't stay before time too. Together they set out for number 12 Blaine Terrace. The night air was cool and deep, with white mystery. Usually so perceptive, Andrew now felt dull and listless. He had no premonition that this night call would prove unusual, still less that it would influence his whole future in Blenheim. The two men walked in silence until they reached the door of number 12. Then Joe grew up short. "I'll not come in," he said, and his voice showed signs of strain. "But man, I know you'll do well for us." Inside, a narrow stair led up to a small bedroom, clean but poorly furnished, and lit only by an oil lamp. Here Mrs. Morgan's mother, a tall grey-haired woman of nearly 70, and the stout elderly midwife waited beside the patient, watching Andrew's expression as he moved about the room. "Let me make you a cup of tea, doctor," said the former quickly after a few moments. Andrew smiled faintly and realized that the old woman, wise in experience, realized that the doctor will go, saying that he would come later. "Don't fret, mother, I'll not run away." Down in the kitchen he drank the tea which she gave him. Overwrought as he was, he knew he could not snatch even an hour's sleep if he went home. He knew, too, that the case here would demand all his attention. A queer lethargic spirit came upon him. He decided to remain until everything was over. An hour later he went upstairs again, noted the progress made, came down once more, sat by the kitchen fire. It was still, except for the rustle of a cinder in the grate and the slow tick-tock of the wall clock. No, there was another sound, the beat of Morgan's footsteps as he paced in the street outside. The old woman opposite him sat in her black dress, quite motionless, her eyes strangely alive and wide, probing, never leaving his face. His thoughts were heavy muddled. The episode he had witnessed at the Cardiff station still obsessed him morbidly. He remained like this so long, and his thoughts were so filled with Christine, that he started when the old woman opposite suddenly addressed him. Her meditation had pursued a different course. "Susan said not to give her the chloroform, it would harm the baby. She's awful set upon the child, doctor." He collected himself with an effort. "Won't do any harm, the anesthetic," he said kindly. "They'll be all right." Here the nurse's voice was heard calling from the top landing. Andrew glanced at the clock, which now showed 3:30. He rose and went up to the bedroom. He perceived that he might now begin his work. An hour elapsed. It was a long, harsh struggle. Then, as the first streaks of dawn streaked past the broken edges of the blind, the child was born, lifeless. As he gazed at his still form, a shiver of horror passed over Andrew. After all that he has promised, face heated with his own exertions, chilled suddenly. Blindly, instinctively, he gave the child to the nurse and turned his attention to Susan Morgan, who now lay collapsed, almost pulseless, and not yet out of the ether upon her side. His haste was desperate, a frantic race against her ebbing strength. It took him only an instant to smash a glass ampule and inject the medicine. Then he flung down the hypothermic syringe and worked unsparingly to restore the flaccid woman. After a few minutes of feverish effort, her hug strengthened. He saw that he might safely leave her. He swung round in his shirt sleeves, his hair sticking to his damp robe. "Where's the child?" The midwife made a frightened gesture. He placed it beneath the bed. In a flash, Andrew knelt down. Fishing amongst the sodden newspapers below the bed, he pulled out the child. A boy, perfectly formed. The limp warm body was white and soft as tallow. The cord, hastily slashed, lay like a broken stem. The skin was of a lovely texture, smooth and tender. The head lolled on the thin neck. The limbs seemed boneless. Still kneeling, Andrew stared at the child with a haggard frown. The whiteness meant only one thing: asphyxia pallida, and his mind, unnaturally tense, raced back to a case he once had seen in Samaritan to the treatment that has been used. Instantly, he was on his feet. "Get me hot water and cold water." He threw out to the nurse in something like crazy juggler. He hurried the child between the two, now plunging into the icy and now into the steaming bath. 15 minutes passed, but no breath came from the lax body of the child. A desperate sense of defeat pressed on him, a rage and hopelessness. He remembered the old woman longing for a grandchild as great as had been her daughter's longing for the child. "White fish, for mercy's sake, doctor," whimpered the midwife. "It's stillborn." Andrew did not heed her. Beaten, despairing, having labored in vain for half an hour, he still persisted in one last effort, rubbing the child with a rough towel, crushing and releasing the little chest with both his hands, trying to get breath into that limp body. And then, as by a miracle, the pygmy chest which his hands enclosed gave a short convulsive heave, another and another. Andrew turned giddy. The sense of life springing beneath his fingers after all that unavailing striving was so exquisite it almost made him faint. He redoubted his efforts feverishly. The child was gasping now, deeper and deeper. A bubble of mucus came from one tiny nostril, a joyful, iridescent bubble. Blanche's skin was slowly turning pink. Then, exquisitely, came the child's cry. "Dear Father in heaven," the nurse sobbed hysterically. "It's come! It's come alive!" Andrew handed her the child. He felt weak and dazed. About him, the room lay in a shuddering glitter. Upon the huddled bed, the mother still dreamed her way quietly through the anesthetic. The old woman still stood against the wall, but her hands were together. Her lips moved without sound. She was praying. Andrew went downstairs through the kitchen into the scullery. His lips were dry. At the scullery, he took a long drink of water. He reached out for his hat and coat. Outside, he found Joe standing on the pavement with a tense, expectant face. "All right, Joe," he said thickly. "Both all right." It was quite light. Nearly 5 o'clock. A few miners were already in the streets, the first of the night shift moving out. As Andrew walked with them, spent and slow, his footfalls echoing with the others under the morning sky, he kept thinking blindly, oblivious to all other work he had done in plainly. "I have done something. Oh God, I have done something real at last."